supposed to have it all together. And when they ask how you're doing, just smile and tell them never better. Lie number 2, everybody's life is perfect except yours. So keep your messes and your wounds and your secrets safe with you behind closed doors. Truth be told, the truth is rarely told, no. I say I'm fine, yeah I'm fine, oh I'm fine, yeah I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm broken, and when it's out of control, I say it's under control, but it's not, and you know it. I don't know why it's so hard to admit it, when being honest is the only way to fix it. There's no failure, no fault, there's no sin you don't already know. So let the truth be told.
All right, good morning, everybody. We are continuing our series, Lies Christians Believe, and I want to start by reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 4. He writes, "Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God." This is God's word. So that phrase, only God can judge me. I feel like this is one lie that more people believe and more people say maybe than any of the others that we're addressing in this series. Maybe it's because you all listened to Tupac back in 1999, right? He wrote a whole song about it. And probably because it's also true in one sense, and it's also a lie in another sense. For example, a kid says to his mom, "You can't judge me." And mama's like, "Yes, I can." It's literally the job description of mom, is to judge your behavior. Like, don't use that line, kids. It will never work. It's just going to get you in trouble. And then, if you fail to turn in your TPS report at work, I don't know if you have TPS reports. We don't do that here. You can't say to your boss, "Don't judge me." You'll just end up getting fired. So if not judging means having no accountability, then that's terrible. That's no good at all. We can't have a society at all. And I think so often when people use the phrase, what they're really asking for is they're asking for no accountability. They just want to do what they want to do. And so often when we do what we want to do, we mess up our lives. But there is another sense of the term, the kind of effect that hypercritical people have on others. When we sense that someone is a judgmental person, we also know that's wrong. And so we want to also be on guard against that. And so it's both a lie we believe, and it's also true. Only God can judge me. Well, it depends. And the most quoted passage of Jesus on judging others teaches us all about it. In fact, I believe this is probably the verse that people quote back at you to defend why they cannot be judged. Let's read through verses 1 through 6 of Matthew chapter 7. Jesus teaches, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So in this teaching from the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest teaching ever, Jesus has a short paragraph on judging, and then it morphs into a section on planks and specks, and then he goes into dogs and pigs and pearls. Now, I hope by now your first question is, how does this all tie together? Like, is there a flow to what Jesus is doing here? Is the pig part totally related to the plank part, which is obviously, that part's related to do not judge? How can we make this maybe make a bit more sense for us? So let's start with do not judge. Have you ever heard someone quote that passage and you say to yourself, that can't be what that passage means? Like, Jesus is not justifying that behavior that you just did. And somebody says to you, do not judge, and you're like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels right to critique right now. Sometimes it feels right to judge that action. Some things are right and some things are wrong. It feels wrong to not judge some things. Like, what if we didn't judge do not murder, or stealing, or terrorism, which are obviously wrong and evil? We have to be able to call out some things. Surely the Bible tells us clearly that there are things that are wrong with humanity. So what would Jesus have us do, or how do we navigate this? So the word judge comes from a Greek word in the Bible. That word is krino. And the word krino, judge, is used 3 different ways in the New Testament. And I want to show you those different ways so we can figure out what Jesus is getting at when he uses the word here in Matthew chapter 7. For example, in Titus chapter 3, this is a pastoral letter that Paul is writing to a young pastor, and he's telling the young pastor that he has judged to winter in Nicopolis. He has krenoed to winter, and it's a decision that he's made. He is judged to go there. Kreno in this section means to make a decision, to distinguish, to decide the best way from the wrong way. It means make a good decision. Is Jesus saying in our passage in Matthew chapter 7, don't make decisions? No, clearly he wants you to use good judgment and to make good decisions, to decide what's best. The second way that kreno, the word judge, is used in the New Testament is in a legal sense, like a court of law. For example, in John 18, Pontius Pilate, when he's judging Jesus, he says to the Jewish leaders, take him and judge him according to your own law. It's a legal sense of the word kreno. He's referring here to a court. Is Jesus saying in Matthew chapter 7, don't have any courts, don't have any legal judgments? Of course, again, no. And then the third use of the word kreno, this was in our passage that we read at the very beginning from 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Paul writes, therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait till the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and he will expose the motives of men's heart. At that time, each will receive his praise from God. This is the third use of the word judge. Do not judge in this way. What he's saying is some things are God's job. Only God can judge certain things. God will bring to light the heart issues. He's going to expose the things that you and I cannot see, the things that are hidden. And so here, the word judge, the word kreno, it means A, something that only God does, and B, it's about judging the core values, the intrinsic worth, the essence of another person. their eternal destination, which these are things I don't want to be doing. I understand that God has not given me authority over that for anyone else, and that I can't really judge another person's heart. It's in this third version that Jesus says in John chapter 7, he says, stop judging by mere appearances. Instead, judge correctly. Essentially, he's saying, don't judge third use of krino, which only God can do, but judge first use or second use of krino, which is making decisions and deciding right from wrong. That is something that we have authority to do, specifically in the church, whereas moms and dads, or if you're a boss at work, you have to be able to make good decisions. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is not saying don't make decisions. He's not saying do away with the court system. He's saying don't put yourself in the place of God. Some judging only God can do. And the first thing that comes to mind is eternity. It's not my heaven. I can't judge the faith of another person. I might go to heaven, and I might even be surprised at who's there. But I'm trying to keep an open mind. See, as a human, I judge by outward stuff too often. And Jesus is saying, leave the eternal stuff to me. I died. I forgive. I give my grace. I created this world. I even created eternity too. So do not judge. Leave that to me. I'm better at that than you. And so what he leaves me to do, what he leaves any of us who are believers to do, is to proclaim God's victory over sin, his victory over death, his victory over the devil, and to point people to Christ. So what he calls me to do is what he calls all Christians to do. But at the end of the day, God says, I'll take care of the judgment things. Salvation is my thing. So to judge is to raise yourself up in order to lower one another. To judge then is to confuse actions with essence and identity. You can judge somebody's actions. You can understand if an action is right or wrong, but you can't judge their identity, their essence. This person maybe did something wrong or dishonest, and we make declarative statements about their motives or their heart or their faith. We don't just say they messed up. We say they are messed up. We say, no, they're broken, they're evil, they're out. Maybe this has happened to you before. Like somebody did this to you. You messed up, and then somebody takes that opportunity to push you down, to like torch your soul, to attack your faith or to attack your essence, your identity. They make you feel worthless. Who here knows exactly what I'm talking about? I think we've all experienced this to some degree. If we evaluate the world and we value one another, we determine the value of another, then we're just being out of line. Jesus then follows this up with the section on planks and specks. To critique, to criticize, to shame someone has at its root, I think, a much deeper issue. Because judging at its core is attempting to control someone else by correcting them or criticizing them or shaming them or ignoring them. We're trying to control their behavior. And underneath it all, judging is kind of all about control. I critique you because I want you to be about what I'm about. I want you to take on my agenda. I want you to do things my way. Think about a parent that like shames their child. You always do that, we like to say. You're always doing that. Why do you act that way? How come you never, ... Geez, Dad, now that I feel terrible about myself, I guess I'll just change. Now, see, shame doesn't motivate or work. Would you agree? Now, there's theological principles behind this. See, Paul talks often that crushing people with the law won't change a thing about them. It can expose what's wrong, but it can't change a heart. Only the gospel can do that. Only the gospel can save. Only the gospel can forgive. Only the gospel can heal. And as a pastor, I get this. I've read the scriptures. I can't control people, and if I shame them, I'll just destroy the chance for God to speak love into their wound. But often as a dad, I fail at this. Too often as a dad, I think I practice works righteousness. And I'm a Lutheran pastor. Like, I should know better, but I fail at this all the time. Now, I know I can't control any of you. And as your pastor, I can't control any of you. But where we mess up the biggest as a parent is when we think we can control our kids, especially with judgment and criticism and shaming and ignoring. We have to judge their behavior, but not at the expense of their value as people, and not at the expense of our relationship connection with them. So what Jesus does is he's connecting these to a far larger flow that's within the passage. Think about the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is all about starting, "Our Father, holy is your name." It's all about admitting who's in control. I'm not in control. God, my Father, you're in control. You have the power. The prayer is brilliant because it confesses God's will and his control are better than my will. And the next section afterwards is about not storing up treasures here on earth and not worrying about your clothes or your food, etc. You're asking God to give you your daily needs. And this prayer, it sets up all this teaching. God is in control, so don't worry about money or clothes or food. And then don't worry about trying to control others. Because judging is how we relate to others. It's relationships. If you don't entrust your money to God, it will control you. If you don't entrust your worries to God, your worries will control you. If you don't entrust other people to God, you will try to control them. God is in control, and he wants to take care of that. Now, he follows up this section on the plank with, "Don't put your pearls before swine." Now, how are the dogs and the pigs that Jesus talks about related to the speck and the plank, and how is it all related to the judging, related to worry about what you eat and drink and wear? I just want to know, how many of you have ever been tempted to throw pearls at pigs? Anybody here? Like maybe you had a weird upbringing or something? I don't know. I mean, it seems like a weird temptation, but Jesus is teaching this. And we know what he's getting at. What pigs value is mud. So if you send expensive pearls to them, a pig's not going to appreciate it. They're just going to trample it under their feet. Well, except maybe this pig. She kind of liked to get dolled up quite a bit. By the way, my daughter, these are her stuffed animals, but this is a razorback. This is from Chuck's office. He had a bunch of kids go to University of Arkansas. I guarantee you, this kind of pig, the kind that likes to eat up and destroy golf courses and stuff, this kind of nasty pig definitely is going to be trample on pearls. So I don't know how many of you are often like wanting to dangle pearls before pigs or anything like that. But I think we kind of understand what he's saying, but at the same time, it's a little weird. I think this is what he's saying. What happens when we can't control others, when we realize we don't? We try to manipulate them sometimes. And sometimes we manipulate them with bad things, like judgment or condemnation or criticism or shame. But sometimes we try to control others through negative things, and sometimes we try to control other people through good things. Pearls are a good thing, a valuable thing, but they don't serve the pig well. Do you know anybody who grew up in a Christian home and they went to all the meetings, and they went to all the worship services, and they went to all the youth groups, and they went to all the youth camps. And when they grew up, they wanted nothing to do with the faith. Sound familiar? The pearl in that instance could be the Christian faith, a good thing. But when applied wrongly or shoved down someone's throat, who's not ready to receive it, it actually ends up being a bad thing. What does Jesus say will happen when you do that to somebody? He says, they will trample it under their feet and turn, and the dog will tear you to pieces. How many family systems have you observed where somebody is showering somebody else with gifts or resources, pearls, and the other person doesn't want it, or they're not ready for it, and they end up squandering it? Maybe their action of giving was in some way a desire to control, a desire to manipulate, or to gain favor with somebody. So Jesus is teaching us to entrust ourselves to God. And with that comes entrusting others to God. Jesus is not saying never educate somebody else or help somebody else or give. No, but sometimes it's about us and control. So that's a couple things about dogs and pigs. Entrusting ourselves and others to God is ultimately the only way that we're going to help somebody else. See, it's easy to quote this passage and say, I guess Jesus is saying, don't ever stand up to anybody. Don't ever help anybody. Don't ever insist anybody. Don't ever judge anybody. No, look at where he ends in verse 5. You have the plank, they have the speck. There is a time to help them with their speck. Just make sure you've checked yourself before you wreck yourself. Make sure you take the plank out. Make sure you're seeing things clearly. Make sure you take care of you before you try to take care of them. You can become the kind of person that helps other people, but first you have to remove the plank from your own eye. And it's an examination of your own motives. It starts by examining your own heart. It starts with, God, do I have any planks? We have to face the illusion of control. You can't control that kid in the first place because they have free will. It's like saying to your spouse, I realize I can't make you do anything. So just let me work on myself. And we'll see where that gets us with our relationship. What we can do is put it at the foot of the cross. I love this person. I would do anything for this person. I would die for this person. But the reality is, God, I can't control them, and I shouldn't want to. So we take it to the cross. Dear God, I'm having a difficult time in this tension. I surrender that before you. I'm going to leave that at your cross. And I think the last point Jesus makes is this. When you set yourself up, you set yourself up. When you judge, it's going to come back to bite you. Now, this is the closest Jesus gets to karma. The Bible is not a book about karma. The Bible is a book about our sin and God's grace. He's far more worried about grace than karma. But judging is just one of those things. That when you're a judgmental person, when you're a worrying person, when you're an anxious, controlling person, you will lose what you wanted to save. You will lose the person that you're trying to control. And this is a really big and. If you judge others, Jesus says, God's going to judge you by the same measure. That's not a job evaluation you want from God. As they say at Life Church, your harshest judgments often reveal your deepest weaknesses. So when you feel some judgmentalism like building up in you, or if you notice you're always saying this thing, ask yourself, what kind of weakness might this be revealing in me? And God, can you heal that weakness? If you want freedom from that, the cross is where you find it. The cross is where we drag our planks and we set them down. You might say that our planks become the cross beams of the cross. Those planks that get stuck in our eyes, that sin that blinds us to what's really going on, it becomes like cross beams to the cross. It's where Jesus is willing to have his hands nailed. It's where he's willing to give up his blood for you. You might say our planks are also a chance for us. When we drop them at the cross, it's like an outward confession, a physical way of confession. Confession is, first of all, about saying to God, your will be done, not mine. Your will be done, and I'm going to confess all that stuff out of me. And here's the good news. God's will, it is going to be done. Jesus' victory on the cross is bigger than all our worries. And since Easter is the biggest holiday in the church, can I just say, resurrection is all about new life. It's all about new life. When you believe in resurrection, you believe that God can change anyone. And God can heal anything. That's the power of resurrection. The worst of sinners, whoever they might be, I don't judge what's going on in their heart and their soul. That's God's job. But I also hold out hope that resurrection will get a hold of them and it will make them new. And so I'm going to preach to that newness that God can make. And Jesus can do that. And I can say to them that Jesus hasn't given up on me either, the sinner that I am. And so maybe he hasn't given up on you either. So God, you do it. Show me how I need to do some plank eye surgery on myself, and maybe then I can help, but it's all up to you. It's your grace, it's your forgiveness, it's your love, it's your call, it's your heaven, not mine. Our Father in heaven, we pray. Holy is your name. Your will be done. It's time for me to let you do your thing. So next time somebody says, or maybe you want to say, only God can judge me. Remember, sort of. We need judges in courts. We need mentors in life that help you judge the difference between right and wrong. So there's some things that as humans we're going to have to judge. We're going to judge behavior. Just don't let judgmentalism tear you down from the inside out. And don't let judgmentalism get in the way of sharing the grace of Jesus Christ. And make sure all the heaven stuff we leave to God's decision making. Because there is one thing that only God can judge: your value, your intrinsic worth, your eternal destination. And he answers all of that with the cross.